Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Truth and Liberty. On today's program, we're going to be talking about a subject that affects literally everyone in America. That subject is the economy and finances. We're going to look at how the economy is performing, but also at the stock market and how to invest biblically. America's economy right now is in a bit of an uncertain place. Some statistics look good, others not the best. Also, some statistics that usually perform in certain ways relative to others, like the relationship, say, between gold and inflation, are not doing so right now. So it's creating some uncertainty out there. Some very good news, though, is that since Donald Trump took office, wages in America have increased 4.3%, while inflation has hovered around 2.4%. That means there's a net gain for the average American. However, we're still feeling an affordability crisis because under Joe Biden, inflation spiked to 8% in 1 year, 6% in the next year, and over the course of his 4 years in office was over 21%. That means that the dollar, your dollars, at the beginning of Biden's administration, or at the end of his administration, bought only 79% as much as when he came into office. That's a problem for the average American, right? That's a problem for all of us. Even now, inflation has still not been fully subsided to pre-COVID levels, but it is within normal. And that's because Biden, the reason it hasn't fully subsided is because Biden and the Democrat-controlled Congress under him pumped $4.7 trillion of printed money into the economy, flooding it with cash. Here we see the inflation chart. You can see in 2021, that number is 7, some say 8. The next year, it's 6.5, some say 7. And slowly came down to 2.9. Now, under Donald Trump, it's back to 2.4, which is actually in the normal range. And so to control this inflation, you guys know what happened. The Federal Reserve spiked interest rates dramatically. The prime rate, which is the benchmark, went from 3.25 during COVID to 8.5% by July 2023. It's like slamming on the brakes on the economy. Interest is literally, the way to look at interest is it's the price of money. If I want to get money, I have to pay for it, and that's called interest, right? So the higher the interest, the more it costs to get money. This means for businesses and consumers alike, it costs more to borrow. And businesses borrow to fund capital expansion and other things. Higher interest rates mean economic activity slows down. Unemployment during COVID went through the roof, almost 15%, as you can see on this chart here. It began to come down afterwards and reached a low of about 4%. However, because of the higher interest rates, unemployment that were elevated to control inflation, unemployment began to slowly rise. Remember, high interest rates slow the economy, so unemployment rises. It's harder to get a job, right? So right now you can see it's inching up. It's now at about 4.4%. This is not Donald Trump's fault, I repeat. This is controlled by the Federal Reserve. And in my opinion, it's time to start bringing those rates down even quicker. All things considered, 4.4% is not a bad unemployment rate at all. Historically, it's below average. But folks are concerned because it has been edging up ever so slightly since about 2023. But let's look at the bigger picture. Let's look at the question of national debt. Right now, our debt as a country stands at $38.8 trillion. This chart I've got up here is a little bit out of date because it's rising so fast, right? This chart shows the growth of the national debt since way back, 1925. But you can see the meteoric rise, like a rocket ship, since the 1980s. And beginning in 1985, you see it beginning to just absolutely take off. The total debt in our country matters, and it matters a great deal. $38 trillion is a sum that is so large, so astronomical, that it's literally beyond comprehension how we could ever pay it off. But, as a matter of current economic performance, and even long-term projections as to how we could get this debt under control, another figure that matters is what is the debt as a percentage of our gross domestic product, or GDP. GDP is the amount of wealth that the nation creates in a year, all right? And in 2001, our national debt compared to our gross domestic product was 55%. That's like someone who makes $100,000 a year in salary and has total debt of $55,000. And they're able to satisfy their debt payments, not a problem, right? But you can see that it stayed at close to that level in America until about 2009. And you might remember what happened in 2008 and 9 was the so-called Great Recession, brought on by the federal government manipulating the real estate industry and the stock market. The Great Recession came on and there was a housing bust and a huge recession happened. And then Obama gets elected, and what does he do? Remember the bailouts? Remember the stimulus? Oh, we've got to stimulate the economy. This is Democrats again coming in and pumping trillions of dollars into the economy, buying great corporations, not letting them, go under because they, too big to fail and all of that nonsense. And what we see is the gross domestic, the debt as compared to GDP shot up so that by 2013, the end of his first term, the national debt compared to our gross domestic product hit 100%, right? And you can see it leveled off a little bit. And then what happened? The Trump administration, it continued to be slightly above 100% until COVID. COVID in 2021 brought on this massive expenditure by the federal government because we bought into this lie, oh, the government is the one to stimulate the economy. The government is the one to rescue everything and everybody. And our national debt, as compared to GDP, shot up to 133% in 2022. That is absolutely unsustainable. And you saw international credit agencies beginning to downgrade the United States of America. We lost our AAA rating, right? You saw movement across the world stage of countries beginning to call for abandoning the dollar as the reserve currency of the world, which if that had happened, it would have absolutely destroyed our influence on the world stage. We would no longer be a superpower. China would be the superpower. That's how important this is. After COVID, the economy released from the draconian restrictions of the leftist regimes across America and the lying CDC in Washington, the economy started growing again. And as a percentage of GDP, you can see that the national debt has dropped back down now to 120%. But don't think that's adequate. That's not adequate. We need to bring that down and way down and in a hurry. Because what we're doing now, our entire national budget of $8-9 trillion a year we're spending, upwards of 15%, 16-17% is just interest on the federal debt. Imagine that. Imagine how much money that is. And as we continue to borrow and have deficits, we're borrowing every year, that debt is growing and the interest is growing. This is what they call the debt bomb, the debt cliff. If we don't get this thing under control as a country, we risk getting to a point where the deficit, the interest we're paying is growing beyond control and eventually consumes our budget, and we're no longer able to fund the operations of the government, and we default on all that loan, and our economy would absolutely crater and be destroyed. So the United States budget deficit, let's talk about this. The U.S. budget deficit, this means how much we're spending versus how much we bring in tax revenue. For the first 5 months of fiscal year 2026, this is good news, guys, now, from October 2025 to February of this year, our deficit was $1.004 trillion. You might be like, that's astounding, and it is. But here's the good news, is it's 12% lower than last year. That means Donald Trump is moving us in the right direction. We haven't arrived yet, but that's good news. Let's talk about the trade deficit. The United States trade deficit, it's a deficit in goods and services. That means we're purchasing more overseas than we are exporting, right? Donald Trump has managed to narrow this deficit significantly to $54 billion a year by January 2026. That's a 25% drop from the previous time period the year before, as exports of our nation have reached a record $301 billion. So remember, under the One Big Beautiful Bill and the tariffs, right? These, I said at the time, this is going to decrease our deficit. It's going to be a net gain for us, and it's turned out to be true because it has increased revenue and cut spending, right? This isn't rocket science. I mean, it's pretty complicated how you do it, but the bottom line is simple. And these spending cuts they haven't even kicked in fully. So Trump is reducing the burden also by reducing federal regulations, which relieves businesses from unnecessary costs and allows them to grow and employ more people and generate more wealth and pay more in taxes. So Donald Trump has also shut down the border with Mexico, the southern border, and is removing illegal aliens. Now, some think this is causing a labor market to shrink. Well, it probably is a little bit, but they think, oh, it's increasing costs on employers. And I would say, yeah, it may be a little bit. But it's not a major problem in this country because what's happening is wages for everyday Americans are also being driven up, as I also predicted would happen. So you see, we started the show with wage growth is up. This means that American citizens are putting more in their pocket, and the welfare of Americans is improving, you might say. So this is a lot of facts and a lot of figures for sure for you today in this monologue. What can we take away from all of this? Well, the first thing is that Donald Trump is moving us in the right direction, but we've got a long ways to go. And the second thing is that in order to get our economy into full gear and healthy again, we've got to get back to basics and sound principles. It means less government spending, less borrowing, lower regulations, right? Let's get rid of the fraud and the abuse in our government. Let's reduce the spending on wasteful, unnecessary programs like, buying prophylactics for Gaza, right? Or gay programming in Iraq, or whatever the case may be. I believe that if the Federal Reserve will also keep lowering interest rates, that our economy is going to boom and these things are going to work their way out. But only if we don't elect Democrats who are going to keep borrowing trillions of dollars, right? And that we hold Republicans accountable to the same thing, so that spending will come down or at least level off, and the deficits will be eliminated by the growth in the economy. Concerning immigration, reducing illegal immigration, I'm all in favor of legal, but reducing illegal immigration is going to continue to increase wages for American citizens. If we need more workers, let them come in legally. Do it legally, no problem with that. But let's not do it illegal, because of it actually damages the financial well-being of the average American, and also brings in all kinds of crime and corruption and risk and other things like that I've talked about so many times here on Truth and Liberty. In the midst of all of this, I have a question for you today. Where is the church? Have we realized yet as believers that free enterprise is a biblical issue? That communism and socialism is the devil's agenda? Are we fighting for these principles and truths? Or are we sitting back thinking, oh, that's a political issue and I'm not supposed to get involved? Are we fighting, and meanwhile, as we fight even for righteous causes in our culture like life and freedom, are we taking our own personal finances and investing them in woke leftist companies that are literally shooting our righteous agenda in the foot by supporting wokeism in our culture? Well, here to talk about all these issues and what we can do about it, both how our economy is doing and how we can invest biblically, is Mark Minnella. Mark is the host of Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries, carrying the mission that Dan Celia founded 28 years ago to equip individuals to be good stewards of their resources according to the principles found in Scripture. FISM develops and offers educational resources and quality programming that equips individuals to steward their resources faithfully, finding financial freedom and purpose in honoring God in their choices. So I look forward to sitting down with Mark here in just a minute. We're going to take a break and share some information, but I wanted to remind you about the upcoming Truth and Liberty Awards Banquet. You can get your tickets now at truthandliberty.net and also find out how you or your business can become a sponsor in this important fundraiser for Truth and Liberty. It's going to be an amazing evening celebrating our God-given history and the contributions of heroes like David Barton and Tina Peters, who we're going to recognize with the Samuel Adams Award and the Samuel Whitmore Award, and you'll get to experience firsthand and in person the incredible, moving celebration called Finding America. So get your tickets today. Also, don't forget to get a copy of my booklet, The Calling to Manhood. All you have to do is go to our website at truthandliberty.net/manhood, share the code LIBERTY, and you can get a free copy today. All right, guys, we'll be back in just a minute after we share this announcement with you to sit down with Mark Minnella.
Darkness has attacked our nation, but God is raising a standard. Now is the time to wake up and shine the light across America and around the world. Believers are fighting back, eyes are opening, hearts are changing, and Christ is being proclaimed. In government, education, family, media, and the church, we are mobilizing to engage culture with truth. Go to truthandliberty.net.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Truth and Liberty. So excited to have as our special guest on today's program, Mark Minnella. Mark is the host of Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries, and he's an expert on investing and all kinds of financial issues. Mark, we're so thankful to have you joining us on Truth and Liberty today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, the economy is always in the news, but, you know, as we're getting close to the midterm elections in November of this year, it's becoming more and more important from a political perspective. But, you know, in general terms, I'd like to just kick things off with asking, you know, Donald Trump's been actually, it seems like he's been in office a whole lot longer than he has, but he's only been in office about 14, 15 months now. And how would you grade his performance and the performance of the Republican Congress so far on the economy and economic issues?
Well, if you don't mind, I wouldn't want to put those two together.
All right.
President and the Congress, because I have a real beef with the Congress not getting anything done. I think the president has done so much. In fact, I love the way you say it. It seems like he's been in so much longer because he's been moving at the speed of light, getting stuff done, restructuring our country to get back to its roots, building the infrastructure needed, bringing factories back, bringing inflation down, bringing real wage growth up. I mean, there's just been so much going on that it just blows my mind trying to keep up with him on it all. And yet most of it is his pen doing it and not the Congress, which really saddens me because we need our House of Representatives to be all over this. We need them to get the budget balanced. We need them to get all the budget bills passed when they're due. We need them to get the deficit down. We need them to get the debt down, because to me, that's one of the biggest concerns for our country is our debt and deficit. If we don't get that under control, that's like the I don't know how to describe it, but we could just crumble in on ourselves. If our debt doesn't get under control and people stop buying our bonds because our debt's through the ceiling and we can't pay the interest on it, or we default on anything and they lose hope in it, we'll lose the dollar as the international trade currency. Mm-hmm. When that happens, nobody's going to buy our debt. When that happens, we're going to see a spike in inflation as the Treasury starts printing money to keep things flowing. That's the main thing. The House of Representatives, that's on them. They have to pass the laws. They have to pass the budgets.
Well, let me throw this out there, Mark, because I agree with you. But, you know, in the House, they've got like when they started, they had a 6 or 7 congressman majority, and you know, and just takes a handful of rhinos to flip on a bill, and they're in trouble. And in the Senate, you know, you've just got a few, and we can see right now they don't have enough to break a Democratic filibuster, and it's just crazy. To me, I don't blame the Congress as much as I just want to say to the American people, elect more Republicans, right? Give them what they need to get the job done.
Are we related? The words coming out of your mouth are what I'm thinking all the time.
Yeah.
I do blame the Congress for this, but whose fault is it if there's people in there who won't do their job?
Yeah.
Well, it's your or mine. It's a citizenship. It's something I call citizenship stewardship. We need to steward this government. God gave us this country, this incredible country, and as citizens, we need to steward this. We need to vote in people who are going to do what they say, people who really are strong conservatives who will balance the budget, who will bring down the debt. That's on us, the people of the United States of America. And part of that stewardship means even just backing somebody financially or physically, going out and just help hold their arms up, be there at their rallies, encourage them. If you don't have the money to back them, just be there though. And I'd even take it further. And I just think people ought to start stepping up to run for offices, not just our Congress, but even school boards and local elections. If we can get this done, we can turn this country around and save it from going over that deficit cliff, which is right around the corner.
Yeah, now you're preaching my message, because here at Truth and Liberty, that's what we're all about, is getting people engaged. It's just so critical. We especially as Christians, we know the truth, and we have a responsibility to stand up and to be salt and light and to make that difference. Sometimes it's a little unfair to blame the ungodly in the world because they don't understand these things necessarily, right? So I totally get it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. If even half of the people who claim to be Christians in America actually stewarded their citizenship like they were a Christian, we'd have enough votes to vote in godly, fiscally responsible people every time.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned debt, Mark, and that's definitely on the list to cover, but why don't we just go there? National debt, the national debt right now is 38 trillion plus, should be 39 trillion by the end of the summer, I think. I've got a chart here. It shows the growth of our national debt in the last few years, and it's just unbelievable, really. I remember when Ronald Reagan ran for office back in 1980. You probably remember that too. Some of our younger viewers won't, but one of his big things was, Jimmy Carter, the national deficit and the debt is out of control. But you can see in 1980, it was like, $5 trillion total dollars or something like that. And look at it since then. And one of the things, so we can see on this chart, I don't know if you can see it, Mark, but there seems to have been a couple of major, it's been on a steady climb, the total debt, for just so long. How do we get the debt under control? Can we even get it under control now? The deficit, or the interest on the debt now is 16-17% of our total national budget. How are we ever going to get this thing under control?
Yeah, it's quickly approaching half of our budget, which is really scary to me. Getting it under control isn't that hard. We have seen the deficit actually reduced in the first 2 months of this year.
Yep.
Think about that. Only 1 year in, and the Trump administration has reduced the deficit, not substantially, the deficit spending, but that's still deficit spending.
Yep.
They haven't stopped it. They just reduced it from, a little bit. It can happen, and the way that happens is we get rid of all the fraud and waste, which I know there's some people who say that's up to 50% of our budget, the fraud and waste of the deficit is there. But even if it isn't, what if it's only 25%? That brings it down substantially.
Yeah, you're talking
that would bring it down.
$2 to $3 trillion if it's only 20%, right?
Right. Now we're talking real money, right?
Yeah.
Well, who said that? I remember that quote from someone. I think it was Reagan too. But anyway, So the fraud and waste, which we saw Trump dig into right away with Elon Musk and the new agency they formed, and they're going after it. But the fight from the Democrats, the fight from the left to keep that money coming through the government and being dispersed to NGOs and then being dispersed to other organizations and then getting back in the pockets of people in Washington. It's just, we stopped that. And I think we could get it under control really quick. The second thing is to stop spending on things that aren't our business to be spending on. I mean, we see it all the time, and Trump brings up more. And if people would listen a little bit to what's going on with Doge, every day they're finding more and more waste in the government that's being spent unnecessarily. We don't need to fund the colleges. They have billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in their war chest for themselves. They don't need our money. We don't need to spend it on European nations or whatever. We can bring it home and start using it to pay down our debt and get it under control. Let's stop all the unnecessary spending. Should we care for our people here? Absolutely. You know, we're a wealthy nation. We are a charitable nation too, but we shouldn't be paying for benefits for people who are able to work and just don't want to.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be giving homes to those people. We shouldn't be encouraging them to be worthless, because it's a terrible thing. When you pay somebody to be worthless, they become worthless and they believe they're worthless, and they get suicidal or they get angry. Those are the two things that happen.
Yeah.
And then they have too much time on their hands, so they take that anger and they turn it into something very, very harmful in our country.
Mark, I remember back, I think it was probably in George W. Bush, maybe before, but people stopped talking about the national debt as a total figure as much, and they started talking about it as a percentage of GDP, meaning they were saying, oh, it's okay, because look, it's only this percentage of our GDP. Well, and I understand that, right? Oh, it's okay because we're making more money as a country than we're borrowing, so we're still all right. The problem is that we kept borrowing and then started borrowing at crazy rates under Obama, and then Biden with COVID, trillion, 2 trillion at a whack. And now we're at I looked at this before the show. In 2001, America's debt was 55% of its gross domestic product, and now it's 120% of the gross domestic product. This is insane, isn't it?
It's totally insane. First of all, putting down a marker to compare it to is only so we can see what's going on. Unfortunately, that marker can move too. We can have better gross domestic product, or we can have worse. And either way, it's not a very good thing to measure our debt against. I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to really just go back to the bottom of this, is debt in itself. We don't need to be a country that's spending more than we bring in. We don't need to increase taxes. What we need to do is figure out where this money really needs to go.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. We can go back. I go back to the Bible. God warns us all through the Bible about debt. He doesn't call it a sin. He just warns us. He says, we'll be the borrower will be slaves to lenders, instead of being a lender to nations, where you'll be blessed if you're a lender to nation. But you don't want to lend to nations that are trying to bring you down, So I think if we just listen to biblical wisdom on finance, I mean, the God who created all the universe and the physics in it, including the physics of money, said, hey, I'm giving you warnings over and over and over again. And he spoke about debt more than he spoke about hell. So we ought to take this a little bit serious,
Wow.
And even if we just went with pure secularism, we've seen over and over the companies that fail often on Wall Street get way over their head in debt, can't manage their debt, end up going bankrupt, and then either going out of business or the government stepping in using your and my tax money to keep them afloat. So we saw that with the auto industry. Remember when, 1980, when the auto industries were going down the tube, stepped in and bought them out and stuck all that money in there from your and my paychecks.
Oh, yeah, that was
everybody else's.
That was the Great Recession of 2008 and 9, wasn't it? When
Yeah,
the
that's right.
bailout,
That's
the big
right.
bailout, they bought GM and Chrysler and AIG.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's and we saw it with banking as well. So we just got to stop that, and we have to. And again, the only way that's going to happen is if we elect the right people.
Absolutely. Let's talk about current sort of economic issues. When Trump came in, he started raising tariffs on countries all over the world. in a way that we have never seen before in our lifetime. And a lot of the traditional-minded people or leftists, of course, the media, they were, sky is falling. This is terrible. He's going to cause a worldwide depression, a trade war. We're going down the tubes, kind of thing. And there probably have been some inflationary pressures from it. Would you agree with that? But overall, has this been a positive thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, they were totally wrong on that. It's a sad thing what happens in our media. They take anything they can, they explode it, they project it into the future, they make up stuff and they add it in, and then it means the world's falling. We saw that with all the echo stuff that we went through. The world's going to end. The oceans are going to rise and California is going to be gone and all the icebergs are going to melt, and none of it came true. None of it comes true with the economics that they've said. Every time they say Trump is ruining our economy, what they forget to look at is all the other levers that he's pulling simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Economics isn't a single lever in one place being pulled. It's not the interest rate. It's not it's not the fraud. It's all of them put together. In fact, one of the things that I think most people are missing when you look at what he was doing with the tariffs, one of the things he was moving towards is paying down the deficit and the debt. He reduced the deficit. Part of that was tariffs, the legal part of it. Part of it was getting rid of fraud and waste. Part of it was laying off hundreds of thousands of unnecessary national people working for the government. I know that's sad to me to see people move, but if they're so important, they should be able to find a job pretty quick. So I'm not worried about that. Yeah. But here's what most people are missing. Every time I hear somebody say something about inflation under Trump, they keep saying, but it's not where the Fed wants it yet. Mm-hmm. Okay. The Fed wants it to be around 2%, but you know where it is? It's right at the norm on the average of where it's been for the past 30 years. Yeah. So he's brought it down from way above into the average. And then what he did on top of that, they'll even come back and say, yeah, it's the average, but it could be better. And if you just stop the terror stuff, or if you stop this war stuff, or if you stop whatever they want to pin or try to turn into some political thing. But here's the bottom line. Real wage growth. And this is what nobody talks about. I've been talking about this now since last October. Real wage growth is higher than inflation, meaning right now, if inflation is 2%, we're at 3.5% real wage growth. Think about that. The average hourly wage is up 1.5% above inflation. So it doesn't matter if inflation was 10%, it means real wage growth would have been 11.5%, which means you're ahead of the game no matter what. So think about all the different numbers they're not giving everybody out there. They're not letting them know that, the inflation is still higher than what I'd want it to be, because I'd want it to be way down. I'd like it to be zero. Why does the central bank get to determine the inflation rate in our country? And most people don't even know it. It's central banks around the world, including our Federal Reserve, that determine what inflation minimal is. Yeah. They actually determine that by how much money they print or how much they put into the market, because it's just more money chasing the same goods is what inflation is. So why don't they tell you, inflation is this amount, but the average worker is doing better because real wage growth is higher than inflation, which means your income is inflating faster than the goods you're chasing.
Yeah. And Mark, under Biden's administration, we saw inflation hit, I think by some markers, 8% in 2022, and then it was 7% in 2023. Throughout his four-year term, though, we're talking 21% inflation. That means that at the end of Biden's administration, the dollars in your and my pocket only bought 80% of what they would have bought before he became president. Is that just another form of theft? I mean, my goodness, that's incredible.
We do say Biden, but we know it wasn't him. we know is his administration.
Correct.
The people behind the auto pen, the people
and
behind
the Democrat-controlled Congress, with the
Exactly.
one more point on this, and I'll let you comment. But you remember they passed the Save America Act and the Inflation Control or whatever they called it Act. And what did they do? They pumped $2 trillion of free money into the economy. It's crazy.
They're very good at mislabeling bills and taxes and all that kind of stuff. They're very good at that, and that's really a shame. But we do have hope, don't we? Because we've seen in the 12 months, the 14 months, what Trump has been able to do. Now, if we could get Congress to codify those things instead of being executive order, we could see a country move in the right direction pretty quickly. We could see this country turn around. I really thought it would take Trump over 4 years to get done what he did in the first year. I wasn't expecting that. I was so thrilled to see what he did because it felt like we were headed down the rapids to the waterfalls way too quickly with the debt and everything.
Yeah.
And then we start seeing him do all this stuff. And I kept saying, yeah, but the debt. Yeah, but the deficit. And nobody was listening. And then I see, oh, he has all this under control here so that he can now start moving the levers over here.
Yeah.
The guy, his administration is genius.
Well, the One Big Beautiful Bill, I think, is an illustration of what you're talking about. When it came out, I studied it, and I did a show and a few articles on it saying this is actually a very good step forward. It doesn't solve everything, but they were claiming, oh, it's going to cause, trillions of dollars of debt and so forth. But in reality, they weren't counting the benefits that were going to come into the economy from this thing, including his tariff plan, and we're seeing it already come to pass as the deficit is coming down.
Yeah, they never do. Economics is like weathermen. Economists are like weathermen. They're wrong more than 50% of the time, but we still turn them on TV every day to find out.
Right.
I'd like to go back to one of the things you mentioned about inflation.
Yeah.
The Biden administration caused our dollar to devalue or the cost of goods to increase substantially. And then when Trump came in and brought inflation down by a fourfold, bringing it down to 2.5%, everybody's saying, yeah, but so they switched the narrative to affordability. Well, yeah, everything costs substantially more, 20% higher than, or 40%, substantially higher than it did when Biden came in. Bringing down inflation does not mean bringing down the price. So they went to affordability to try and make it sound like, well, he's done nothing for affordability. Well, I did a little research. Let me share something with you here.
Sure.
Used cars and trucks, they're down 25% since the Biden administration. Shipping and freight rates down 75% since the Biden administration, which then ripples through everything else because you ship everything, right? And you freight. Lumber, it's down 65%. That means the cost of a house going up is substantially cheaper. Gasoline, it's down to 40% less than it was. Now, maybe it's only down to 35% less because of the spike we have right now. But think about that. Even during a war, even when oil is being threatened, gasoline is less than it was during Biden by substantially. Okay. Fuel and heating oil down 35%, natural gas down 50%. I mean, it just goes on. Appliances down 7.5%. So affordability, yes, he has made it more affordable to live in America. He has done that. This administration has moved on that. And a lot of that has to do with bringing oil prices down. Some of it has to do with getting rid of the fraud and what's going on. A lot of it has to do with bringing manufacturing back to the United States. So we just see a lot of great things happening. You started this with asking me what kind of grade would I give him? I'd give him an A+ at this point.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, let me talk about immigration with you for a second, Mark. Immigration has illegal immigration and the enforcement of immigration laws. So, some people are saying, oh, you're kicking out the illegals. That's making a labor shortage, which is causing employer, causing prices to go up and all this sort of stuff. What's your take on enforcing the law? Does that hurt the economy? Well, that's called
Only
a
if they're
loaded
bad
question.
laws to begin with, but these aren't bad laws. You probably remember as I do. I remember, I don't know, back in the 70s or 80s, you could go back and forth on the border without a passport. You just had your driver's license. You go back and forth, no big deal. People came and went. And one of my favorite guitarists, Carlos Santana, used to go back and forth from San Francisco down to Tijuana. Never had to have a passport or anything. That's the way it was back then. But they didn't get benefits for coming into our country. They came in legally, showed their ID and came in, but they couldn't file for benefits. They couldn't get housing. They couldn't get food stamps. They couldn't get all these benefits that the liberals have now given to everybody and anybody. Now, I'm a compassionate man. If I see somebody hungry, I want to feed them. But if we're telling the world, anybody who's hungry, come on here and don't worry about coming in properly and just take advantage of our country, we're going to go down the tubes. If you come in illegal to begin with, you have a disrespect for this country. You have not shown that you're coming here because there's opportunity. You're coming here to get a handout, to get your free cell phone, to get your free housing, to get your free. I did a little calculation last year, at the end of last year. You know what the average benefit was for somebody who applied for all the benefits, like to stay home and not have to work? $60,000 a year.
Wow.
Is that right? That was for illegals and legals, both. For our Appalachian people in poverty in the mountains and people in poverty in the south of the city. It was for everybody. $60,000, up to $60,000 a year in benefits you could get. That's going to bankrupt a country. So I believe if you come into our country with the attitude that I'm just going to rape your country of financial resources and live off of it, that way I don't have to work, that way I don't have to do anything, I don't have to contribute, you shouldn't be here. Yeah. You're not welcome. That's the way I feel. Well, if you're coming in and you see our country as a place of opportunity, you see it as a wonderful God-given country where founded under Christianity to care for one another, and you come in respectfully and you say, I want to be a part of this great thing that God created, you're welcome here. And I want you here because, my grandpa came from Italy, you know, and he worked hard. He worked hard. My dad, was born here, but he worked hard. I know a lot of immigrants who came here legally, and they're really ticked off about all these people coming in just to take advantage of us. And it's just wrong. Yeah.
Well, Mark, let me ask you one follow-up question on immigration real quick and this whole wages and stuff like that. If the nation is flooded with illegal workers, that means there's more workers, which means the price for work goes down, right? But if we control immigration, that means the price for work will go up, which helps American workers, doesn't it?
It should, yes, absolutely. I agree with you on that. That's an excellent point in the sense that oftentimes in the past, we used immigration just that way. There was only so many green cards given out. There was only so many work permits given out at the border, at both borders, actually, So we saw that happen properly. But what we're seeing now has nothing to do with work. It's really just a socialist agenda to bankrupt our country. Yeah. And once they bankrupt our country, then we have to fall into the one world order. And I know that sounds like a conspiracy thing. No,
not on this show.
It's a reality. Oh, not on this show, it doesn't. Huh? Yeah. It's a reality. If you do your studies, if you look into it, you'll see it's absolutely true. It's part of the agenda, and they almost won, if not for the Trump administration.
Yeah. And now, tell me this. I want to talk about biblical investing and this sort of thing. But right now, the election of Donald Trump, this administration, God has pulled this country back from the precipice, and now I think the Lord is saying, okay, church, how are you going to respond to this opportunity I've given you? Are you going to sit back on your hands again and pretend like it's not your responsibility, or are you going to rise up and do what needs to be done to turn this country around? Do you sense that same thing or have any thoughts about that?
I am so glad you brought this up, because this election coming up this year, this midterm election, will either make or break this country. I know they say that every time. I never agreed with them in the past, but I do now, because we're so close to that deficit cliff. We're so close to that debt cliff where we may never recover. We will recover, but it could take tens of years to recover if we don't get it under control now. So as citizens of this country, you have been given stewardship over the best country in the history of the world. And you need to get out there and vote. You need to let people know what's really at risk. Your lifestyle's at risk, your children's lifestyle, your children's children. But even more than that, what most people don't realize, we are the final frontier of keeping communism and socialism from taking over the world. We're it. That's it. Great Britain has already fallen. They're more Islamic than they are Great Britain, than they are England. They're being controlled by socialists and communists now, and we don't have them anymore as our partners like we thought. They weren't even there when Trump went into Iran. Think about that. Yeah. They wouldn't even let us land our planes on their bases. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's not a partner. They're already gone down the hill. We're so close to losing it. That's why we need to be woken up. We need to become awake, conscious of aware. We need to get out and vote for those people. Right now, the Republican Party is the only party that has the right people in there. There's a handful of Democrats that are fiscally responsible and that have actually half a brain to move properly. But outside of that, it's the Republican Party and the independents. I really do believe there's quite a few independents who think straight and think deep. And I think they mostly lean towards the Republican. But if the core, which is the Christians of America, do not wake up, do not start studying, and then go vote properly for the right people, not just because your dad voted Democrat or Republican, but because it's the right thing to do to keep this country right, we could lose this country.
Well, Mark, I appreciate that so much. Tell us about your organization and your ministry.
Well, Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries, what we do is we broadcast every day, weekday, Monday through Friday, live at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on over 500 channel TV and radio stations, but also online at financialissues.org. You can watch it live there, or you can stream it if you want. But every day, we are taking questions from our listeners, financial questions. We're taking economic questions. We're taking political questions. We're discussing the world, what it means to be a steward from a biblical perspective. So everything financial from a biblical perspective, including economics and finances and politics. So we do that every day. We also teach. We have videos where we put together and teach people how to invest and how to invest with biblical integrity. We have a system that we want everybody to fully understand. And FTB analysis is something I started almost 20 years ago when I owned my own investment advisory. FTB analysis, what it stands for is fundamentals, technical, and biblical. We start with the biblical. The first thing is you put all the stocks in the world, in the United States or whatever you're looking at. You could look at World 2 on the desk, and you say, which of these either honors God or at least does not offend God or grieve his heart? Meaning they're not involved in using and abusing people like prostitution, sexual immorality, abortion, pornography, slave labor, like China, or other things like that, including the LGBTQ agenda. We first of all, we screen them all, and we take anything that does not pass the BRI, the Biblical Responsible Investing Screening, off the table. We don't even consider it. It doesn't matter if they're the biggest company in the world or the smallest. It doesn't matter if they have more money than countries have. It doesn't matter. They're off the table. Why? Because we believe in God. We believe that God has the answer and following him is the right thing to do. And when you buy a stock, you actually become a partner in that company, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you buy a stock, you may be 1/1,000,000th of a partner, but you're a partner just the same. Therefore, you are participating in whatever they do. If they are involved in pornography, you are involved in pornography as an owner. And you also are endorsing the stock with your money. And the more people that buy the stock runs up. So you're giving them more power. When you give them more power, they buy more ads on television and radio and streaming venues that give the message that they want, not that God wants. And that message is do whatever you want, use and abuse whoever you want. Why is our society like it is? Because just follow the money. Take it to the top and it goes to Wall Street. And it's the large corporations that everybody is investing in right now, that it's their money who determines the media. It's their money that determines the news. It's their money that determines how films are made and what the messages are going to be. So when we stop putting money into those companies and move it to companies that don't break God's heart by using and abusing people or causing people to stumble on their way to Christ or with Christ, then what we'll see that impact on our society. So that's called investing with biblical integrity. So we help people learn how to do that and still not have to compromise returns or their values. And by doing that, we affect society and we affect the world.
That's amazing. So is that information or whatever, is that on your website, or do we need to listen to your show, or both?
Yeah, or both. Yeah, I like the or both.
You like the or both?
A lot of the information's on the website. We have some of the information is in what's called a Partners Hub, and that's where we list a lot of stuff. We have some technology that we have to pay for, so we charge a very small amount to get access to that. It's like $130 a year. I mean, I used to pay more for that for investment newsletters with 10 tips a month in it, you know?
Yeah.
So, but here you get to go back there. You see what asset allocation is all about, how to use it, what it does and doesn't do, how it helps with risk and where it doesn't. You see our buy, sell, and hold alerts. You have videos on how to invest and how to start investing. Some of those are on the front end too, so you don't have to worry about that. But our whole goal is to help educate and equip Christians to invest like a steward, a godly steward, and to help them understand the fullness of stewardship. You know, a lot of people don't understand that. Here, for example, there's a real big deal going on right now. President Trump signed into effect a new thing. It's called the Trump Kids account.
Trump accounts.
Have you heard about that?
Yeah, Trump accounts. Okay. Sure.
It's a neat idea, isn't it? Immediately, the left started saying it's just for rich people and stuff like that, but it's not. Think about this. When a child is born into poverty or in the lower middle class, if their parents care enough to open an account for them, $1,000 is put in by our government from our taxes right away. Now, that $1,000, you could put in up to $5,000 more a year. But here's what's cool. People like Michael Dell and others, corporations are starting to donate into accounts of lower income people to start seeding these accounts. And it can grow to millions of dollars over a child's lifetime. By the time they're just 18, ready for college, they could have a couple $100,000 in there with what corporations and individuals are doing, not even if the parents never put anything in. It's an incredible thing. And it's like an IRA for children without having to have income. Okay. This is excellent. The issue is if you do put money in there, there's only one thing you can invest in. And the way it reads is an S&P 500 type index. Now the S&P 500 has 500 of the largest stocks that meet certain criteria in it. Unfortunately, 40% of those are in abortion, pornography. They are in companies that back sexual immorality. They are in companies that use and abuse their workers. There's so much ugliness in there that I could not, as a Christian, partner with those companies through my money or the money. I mean, imagine opening an account for your for your grandchild and putting money in it, but only being able to invest in companies that kill babies or create pornography or use women as use and abuse women through pornography. This is awful. So what we're trying to do, the concept of stewardship would say, I can't invest in those because I become a partner and I'm participating in increasing these kind of ugly things in this world, right? So what we want to do is get a petition together, and we started this petition just recently. You could go out to TrumpAccountsForAll.com, TrumpAccountsForAll.com, read the petition. It's very respectful. We love what you're doing, Trump and administration. We love the idea of these, but could you give us an investment option for the faithful? Don't leave us out. Don't leave us out.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what you're doing is asking in the petition, asking the Trump administration to open up this plan so that other values-based, Bible-based investing strategies can be used for the funds in these Trump accounts, right? Yeah,
absolutely. That's exactly it. That's exactly what we're trying to do. We're not telling them they have to take the S&P 500 out of there.
Yeah.
That's not part of it. What we are telling them is we want them to include the faithful, include those people. You can keep the S&P 500 in there, but give us an index like one of the Timothy Plan indexes. Give us something like that would allow us to invest in it as well.
Yeah. So how do people sign on to this petition? They go to TrumpAccountsForAll.com?
Right. Or you can go to financialissues.org. It's a few less typing strokes. And right at the top of that is a banner. You just click on that. It'll take you to the petition so you can read it and you can see how we are honoring the administration with this. We're not being rude. We're not saying, why are you leaving us out? We're just saying, please give us this option. Write it into the law. Because as soon as Trump's out of office, let's say that somebody on the left gets in, they could stop us from investing in something that was biblically responsible. So absolutely. Let's get it into the law that there has to be an option also for biblical responsible investing in there, so they can't take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. And so people, where do they catch your show as well? Is that on financialissues.org? .org.
Yeah, that's a place I really recommend people go because you can watch it there. You can log on when it's time for the show to start at 9 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. And there's a chat in there, and there's hundreds of people in the chat. Great conversations in the chat. You can participate. You can call in to our show and ask questions live, or you can put them in the chat. We'll deal with them there. Obviously, you could email us as well. Well, Mark, there's a button for "Hey Mark" questions. We call them. Hey Mark, I was wondering about.
That's fantastic. So, Financial Issues Stewardship Ministries, Mark Minnella. It's been awesome having you on Truth and Liberty today. Very educational. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. You made it so easy. What a blessing to be here.
Thank you. Folks, I wanted to remind you about the Truth and Liberty Awards banquet coming up on May the 1st of this year. We're going to be recognizing the amazing contributions of David Barton and a local hero named Tina Peters, who stood up for election integrity and is spending 9 years in prison today because she dared to challenge the status quo. Guys, also, I'm going to remind you about our free booklet today. It's my book, The Calling to Manhood, and you can get this for free by going to truthandliberty.net/manhood. If you want to get it for free, just share the code LIBERTY, and we'll give you a 100% discount on that. Thanks, everybody, for watching today. God bless you all, and we will see you again next time here on Truth and Liberty.